Hey, welcome to the first episode. Can you believe it? First episode of 2022 for Josh Does Mean Things. Yay! I'm also running out of Lionel Richie songs. If you look in the chat, Brian is kicking my butt. I don't want to go play karaoke tonight because I would pretty well, I can't sing, but I'm running out of Lionel Richie song titles for puns. So, way to go, Brian, kicking my butt on that. So, yeah, welcome everybody. This is your first time. This is a show where I, Josh Baker, say mean things about our user submitted photos. So if you're one of our patrons, um, patreon.com/Azulux, that you submit a photo and we put it live on air and we say mean things about it. Yeah. But the joke is really, it's not really mean things. Try to helpful things, constructive critiques. That's probably be a better way to say it. Um, we're just here to help you get better and have a little fun along the way. So, um, yeah, that's all it is. Nothing too crazy. I thought I was gonna have some. I thought I was gonna have some failures already because at one point my mouse was moving like I don't know 1 inch a minute, just not very fast. So I had to do a software update and then a software update and then optimize Lightroom and then a restart and then a restart. And I tried updating my NVIDIA drivers and that didn't work. And now we're working, but I'm not really sure what was the magic uh, key there, but it's working. So hi Bill, how you doing? I hope Bill and Evelyn are both watching. Um, so yeah, good times, good times. Um, so here we are. We're yeah, there's not really a theme today. There was some motion. There's some panoramas. We had our team loves to shoot group. We went out Saturday in the cold and wind, like 30-mile-an-hour wind, and we did Austin skyline panoramas. So I see a couple of those from Steven and Mark. Both submitted some of those. So yeah, we have food and portraits and all kinds of stuff. So I took the liberty to kind of edit some photos. The ones some people asked me some specific questions, so I wanted to take those into Lightroom, and kind of show you. So we're just gonna have everything powered by Lightroom this time, um, because I don't know, we just are. So yeah, let's see if that's working. No, maybe, maybe. And sometimes the chat goes there, sometimes it doesn't. All right, you can see all my stats. All right, let's scroll back to the beginning. All right. That is a red. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Um, hey, look, I can see chat. Awesome. Cool. So we're just going to be inside Lightroom today because I didn't have time to build the slideshow because I was updating software and restarting my computer and all those fun things. Yay, technology. The more you need a computer, the less it needs you. So I think they know that. And it was functioning like a stepchild would. So, and yes, I am a stepchild. So, all right. So yeah, this first one's from Chris. I think the file said um, Olympic National Park, maybe, which is really awesome. I kind of want to go there, just judging by this photo. I love the. I don't know. What I like about this photo is it really feels like it's out of time, right? It feels like it could be at like 1950s, like Adirondacks. It feels like it could be just those like muted colors, that sunlight coming in. Really good job at f22 to get that starburst. Generally, lenses will start doing this at f16. Hey, Miguel, and you can count the number of aperture blades in your lens by having the number of starburst. So I see one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. So there's 14 starbursts. So that means this lens has 7 blades for its aperture. Handy trick, right? Um, so yeah, the other thing at f22 though is you're gonna get lots of dust spots. If you have any dust on your lens or on your sensor, you're gonna see them because at f22 everything's in focus. And so in that case, yeah, there was a lot in focus. There's a lot of dust spots, some pretty big ones too, but we'll fix those up. So a couple things, this horizon isn't quite straight. It's a little tilted to the right, so that's kind of the first thing I notice. Um, I like the starburst, I like the colors, I like the blue in the waters. It kind of has a muted feel, but if you know me, not so much muted. I have a hard time. I really do have a hard time like editing my photos softly. I tend to for lack of skill, I just go and just push all the sliders to like 11, right? So for me, it's very common just to be like, ah, this one goes to 11, mate, and just crank them all up. So I did a version of this where I cranked it up. We'll get to that. So I think F-22, not only for the starburst, but also for getting everything from the boats and the canoes or kayaks right there in the front, all the way to the horizon and focus. I think that's a strong choice to kind of pull everything here. I don't think there's any one thing that needs, a shallower depth of field. So, I think there's kind of good weight, right? We have texture in the front, we have a good foreground, we have the piers and the horizon line as our kind of mid, and then, we have that cool starburst in the back for our background. So good. And, this photo definitely feels three-dimensional. We have those cool mountains kind of coming down to a point. If it was me, I'd maybe step to the right just a little bit. Use some of those kayaks to point to where that apex, that bottom apex of the horizon comes. If we could have used some of those foregrounding elements to help point to that area, because right now the foreground really points to the right and takes our vision right first, but then kind of the main point's kind of to the left. So there's a little ziggy going on. So maybe just step into the right, and there's a couple more kayaks that are pointing to the center. So using those as our leading lines up to that valley, and then we can kind of, right, then the eye naturally kind of goes through the frame. So those are kind of the main compositional things I would change. I do like the colors. I think it's the right time of day to shoot this. So let's just see what Josh did here. I went I went crazy. I went crazy on this one. So I don't know if you can see my sliders, but Dehaze 42, Vibrance 55. I usually don't go this far. I usually don't go more than like 25 on either one of these. But I wanted that horizon. If we look at the original, the shadows here on the horizon, they're not. We don't need the shadows there because there's not really detail. It just kind of looks like noise. So I made them black, and just went crazy with it. It takes away from that vintage feel. And so like I said, what I lack up for skill, I just go with volume, right? If I can't be right, I can at least be loud. But we did, so a couple things here. We did spot removal. There were some dust spots here in the corners, got rid of those. The other thing on crop tool, I don't know if y'all are aware that this is even there. So let me just show you this. There's a little angle tool, and you can draw the horizon line, right? We can just draw the horizon, and then it'll straighten to whatever line you draw. And so sometimes, like if you're unsure on the horizon, you can just draw it with that little angle tool right there. And I think that's pretty helpful. So that's really all I did, except for I also did a custom tone curve. I used to do these, and then I kind of got away from it for a few years. But I've really been into custom tone curves again lately. So in this case, I really kind of boosted the uppers and then just slightly darkened kind of the shadows and blacks. But I've really been kind of playing more with this custom tone curve instead of using the numerical numbers here, highlight, shadows, blacks. I did use them here, but really it's just to boost shadows and kill the highlights to really darken that sky even more. So yeah, just a couple things we could have done. I could have gone a lot farther with this, but yeah, fun one, Chris. This next photo is from Miguel, and I love this photo. It's great. Good job. This is a problem when people send me like their portfolio photos. I'm like, yep, that's exactly how it's supposed to look. Well done. I will say that, right, a couple things. Her right foot kind of gets lost. That leading foot, we kind of lose that. That front, the camera closest arm, we lose a little bit as well. So, I think the light on her face is great. I love that she has kind of a soft expression on her face. Usually when somebody's jumping, you kind of see that exertion in their face. So this is really neat to capture one where it's, right, the face is serene, even though there's all this motion going on. And to me, that's really what sells this photo. I mean, there's this cool long, I guess it was lit by like the modeling light and then the flash firing at the end. Second curtain sync. So, really good example of that technique. And I really love the expression on her face contrasted against that motion of, right, the pre-jump. So that's pretty cool. I just, I would have loved to have seen a little bit more light on her foot and her hand, because kind of get lost a little bit there. Those would be my only real critiques. And I like that you went with more of an 8x10 crop. I think that really fits the action pretty well. Um, so I bet this looks pretty cool printed out, as long as you don't use a custom print driver. Oh, I know. I shaved. I know. I've been wearing so many masks, and my face with allergies and wearing a lot of masks again. My face was getting really irritated, and so I shaved for the new year. But I'm already starting to grow it back. It's already like half an inch in, so I'll probably keep it shorter for a little while. It kind of started my skin has been really bothering me. Um, anyway, good job, Miguel. I really like this one. Um, yeah, cool. Cool, cool. This is one of Brian's, if you couldn't guess. I don't know. Again, right? This is one of those nice, like, there's motion, there's energy, there's things going, right? Um, we got a bass player going crazy, right? We got another guitarist kind of chilling out. Lead singer, right? It definitely feels energetic. Wow, an energetic black and white. Who would have known it was Brian's? Oh, also the new strawberry Waterloos. Yum yum. Um, the only thing I like everything going on here. I don't think there's anything wrong with anything that's really in the photo. Um, I think the only thing I would have liked, or maybe an alternate take, would be the lead singer like interacting with the crowd or singing into the mic. It's kind of a down moment for him. And with the way his hand is, we lose a little bit of his face. Not that the lead singer needs to be the subject of every photo, but with the slashing hair on the left, and the other guitarist looking down, there's not really a connection with the viewer, right? There's no one person there for the viewer to kind of latch onto and like, oh, that's the one I'm supposed to look at. Um, I I don't know that this photo necessarily needs that, but just as another way, another take would be, to have them looking at the crowd or having crowd interacting or have them like singing or having the guitarist looking at you. I don't know, some moment where we can see some eyes or hands or not hands, hands or eyes or mouth, right, singing or talking or doing something. So, but the energy and the feel, right? I think you can almost hear the music playing, and that's kind of a good storytelling device, right? If you can smell a food photo, if you can hear a music photo, you've probably done your job, right? That's probably a good way to think about it. So, yeah, cool, Brian. I like it. All right, this is from Kiera, and Kiera asked me a question here. She said, she had this cool like some orange blob thing, and she used a light gelled orange to illuminate that foreground element. And then while hand holding that, gelling that, and holding her 85, um, she felt like, this photo was close, but it didn't get all the way to what she wanted. Um, so let's kind of talk about ways that it just didn't quite work. Um, for me, the strong part of this photo is the top. If we drew a line and right down the center line and above, I think works, right? We have this S going, right? She has like her S as well, right? She's kind of S. But then at the bottom, we have this kind of negative space where, like, if you go back from her knees, right, we have that negative space. And then the lower left, we have a little bit of gap in just that little bit in the lower left where we have that gap. This one right here, right? If we zoom, ha 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 ha. If we zoom in, right there, this little gap right here, right? And so that's a place for the eyes to escape. And then this bright area here is another area for the eye to kind of escape out of the photo, right? This area down in here, right? That's just another place for the eye to leave the frame. So we have these cool curves, right? We have this really pretty out of focus highlights, right? We got this nice cool bokeh back there. We got a good expression on the couple. All of that is great, right? I think all of that works. It's really just getting rid of this bottom area here that doesn't support the rest of the photo. Um, and so the only thing I did, I just took and cropped it. So I went with a 16 by 9 crop, and I changed nothing else. There was no other correction. There's no other, but just that little bit. And because the eye no longer has a place to escape, I think the photo is much more powerful. Much more powerful. I swear I learned how to speak English at least 2 years ago. But then we have this kind of S curve here, and that kind of flows. That kind of flows with the S of her body, right? So we have an S from her, and we have an S from there. There's really no way for your eye to go now, right? It comes down and back up. We see, I think this part right here, right, this bokeh area becomes more involved in the photo, and it just forces you to look at them more so than right, without that 16 by 9 crop. Literally, that's all I did. That's the only change, right? Just that little bit of a crop. And I think it really pushes it all the way there. Everything else looks really cool. So neat device. I'm kind of curious what it looks like and what that thing was in real person. So anyway, that's my change, Kira. Everything else I really like about this photo. Good job. All right. I think I was pestering Steven as he was taking this photo. I kept running up and down the line. Hey, y'all okay? Y'all need anything? So this is taken from the Pfluger pedestrian bridge. And it was, you can't really tell it from this shot, but it was like 30 and 40 mile an hour gust. I mean, it was whipping on the water, and we were on that bridge. So it got, once the sun went all the way down, man, it was, whew, it was chilly. So right, things I like. I love the color, the tonality of all this. You know, shadows, highlights are all well controlled. That new Google building's pretty neat. I think that really makes a neat addition to the skyline. And so, right, we had almost a full moon there, right? We had a lot of good stuff going on. So also, I don't know if y'all know, but it's pretty easy to do raw files, panoramas in Lightroom. All you have to do is select your files, right click, right? We go to photo merge, and then we can just go to panorama, and it'll build your panorama straight from raw files. So it's a really easy way to go. Steven, what focal length were you using for this shot? If you don't mind, just tap it in the comments. I'm kind of curious. I don't remember which one your camera had on. I do notice there's a little bit of like vignetting overlay here. I try to shoot panoramas probably 2 stops down from whatever wide open is. So if it's a 2.8 lens, I want to try to shoot them 5.6 or so. And that'll kind of usually correct at 24, yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I notice on yours, and this is just me having a little bit of compulsion about my edges, but this building on our far left over here, right, those lines are starting to go, right, they're coming in, right, they're not straight up and down, right? If we put a grid overlay, right, that's no longer straight. And so this whole kind of left-hand side, because it's closer than this far side over here, right, the buildings are physically closer to us, it's going to get more of the distortion than the things that are further away. And so, again, really the only thing that I changed, is just, see, can we see how we straighten those images, those lines up? And the way we did it, we go to transform, and then we go to guided, and then we can draw the edge on our right, and we could draw the far edge on our left, and then it corrects for those angles that we draw. And so just doing that, I think, makes the photo feel a little bit kind of more stated. But then what it also does, because this one's vertical and that line's vertical now, is that this curve, the curvilinear nature of this new Google building really stands out more in contrast than it does here, where kind of everything has a little bit of an angle to it. This building doesn't stand out as much. Don't know if you care about that building. I kind of like it. But again, that's the only little change I made. The other thing for panoramas, I tend to like them, shooting them a little bit on the longer focal length, shooting them at like a 35 mil or a 50 or an 85, especially if you have a prime in that range. At 51.8 at like 5.6 is a really good panorama lens. It's really sharp, it's lightweight, and you can kind of punch into the details, right? And so by shooting multiple frames, we can get more resolution. So if you're trying to do like a high res pano, shooting with a little bit longer focal length can punch into those details, and you don't have to deal with as much distortion, right? So the camera shooting in multiple rows, multiple heights, you can get the angle of view that you need and get that added resolution. Whereas if you shoot at 24, this probably only needed, 3 or 4 shots to get it. Yeah. So that's kind of just something to consider if you're doing panoramas, 35, 50, 85, whatever prime you have in that. And the reason I say a prime, because my 24 to 105, it's like 12 years old now. If I tilt the camera down, sometimes it kind of starts zooming out. And if I tilt it up, it'll zoom in, right? So it'll kind of, the weight of it will kind of spin. So if you're doing multi-row where you're starting to tilt up and you're on a zoom, sometimes that lens will kind of zoom out as you tilt back and it'll zoom forward as you tilt in. So I just like using primes when I'm doing panorama because that way I know that there's not going to be any weirdness with my focus, my focal length changing during the exposures. Because I can really mess up. You're doing a whole like 24 row or 24 image panorama, and the top row the lens starts coming down or zooming out. Then you have to start all over, and it's really frustrating. So, just something to keep in mind if you have any type of prime. That's probably what I would use on panoramas. But otherwise, I really love like this that last bit of light dying out, and just that little bit of skylight starting to come in. So cool. Awesome. Hey, look, another one from the Fluger Pedestrian Bridge. I know. Who would have thought? This is from Mark. Mark is a good lad. Really nice having him out there. He brought his one wheel, and I didn't get to try it because it was too windy and I don't want to stick around. I like how we used, this is what we would call internal framing, right? So we use the out of focus bridge and the gap there to frame up our background, right? So it's a great way to use depth of field, right? Great way to make a photo feel three-dimension. Put something out of focus very close. The railroad bridge then becomes kind of our mid-ground. But then by using internal framing, right, our eye knows exactly where to go. The brightest thing is in the center, right? This right here is our brightest object. Oh, let's see, not that one. Do y'all know the new zoom control, right? Ooh, right. So this is our brightest object. So our eye goes here and it's in focus and it's the thing that's internally framed, right? So I don't think there's no doubt what Mark wanted you to see with this photo, right? He wanted you to look at this building, right? There's other buildings there and there's, the Pac-Man and all that. But with the way this was constructed, this is what you see. Now, as your eye wanders around, yeah, there's other little details, sure. But the first place your eye goes, I bet, is right there in the center. That zoom I did, if you hold control, you can draw a square or whatever shape you want, control, and just drag your mouse. And then Lightroom will zoom just to that. So anyway, that's one of the new zooms that came out about a year ago. I didn't do anything again. The only thing I did was I slightly straightened the image. This image is a little crooked, and this one was just auto align, but the bridge was a little bit, see the line there, that bridge was just a little bit kind of leaning in. So all I did was hit auto on transform, right? That's it. I tried playing with some other crops. Nothing worked as well as this one. Sometimes you try stuff, you move the sliders, you don't like them, you go back to zero. So, I think this is well done. I kind of like the tonality of it. I don't mind that these are in the shadows. This isn't, it goes pretty much to black, but I don't really care. They're dead trees. We don't need to see them anyway. So they're just there for color and texture. We don't really need to see into the trees there. It's not like it's, New England fall colors, right? It's just dead cedar trees and dead whatever trees those are. So anyway, good job, Mark. All right. This one comes from Jim. Jim, I hope you're watching. Jim had just taken our food photography class at Precision. And so Jim's getting into baking and lighting and all kinds of fun stuff. And so this is an attempt at one of his cookies. He's also switching over from Capture One to Lightroom. So a lot going on there and a lot to learn. Oh, did I show you the right one? I may have showed you. Oh, sorry. This is his version. Haha, I flipped these around. So a couple things, right? I think it's good that, there's three subjects, right? Rule of odds, 1, 3s, 5, 7s, 9s as, hey, Jim, there you are. 1, 3s, 5, 7, 9s as objects in a frame are more interesting than 2, 4, 6s, and 8s, right? The literal, the word for somebody that isn't cool is a square, right? Oh, hey, Brian, if you're still on here, I found one of your zip drives. I don't have anything to read it with, but I found one of your zip drives. Anyway, so you're right. I think, the idea was there, right? 1, 3, 5. There's 3 cookies. That's good, right? Nice up close macro at f13. A lot of detail. What's crazy is this photo was shot at f13, and there's only like an inch of depth of field. right? So as we're shooting macro, just remind, as we get closer to our subjects, that depth of field really starts to drop, right? If we're within 6 inches of our subject, I mean, it gets super, 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 super shallow. When we do ring shots for weddings, I might be, 3 or 4 inches away from the ring. Even at f11, I'm only getting like a 1/4 inch of depth of field, maybe not even that. Um, so macro, oddly, really takes a lot of aperture to get to where um, you can hold focus throughout, right? So the light's pretty good here, right? We have light coming from the back. We have a fill light from the front right. I think all of those things are pretty good. I think this composition is a little bit. I would have liked to have seen the camera swing to the left so that we see more of the cookies in the back and more of a triangular manner. Right now, this one in front's kind of dominating. We don't really see the ones in the back. So if we were spinning around just a little bit, we could still focus on this one, but maybe get a little bit more of those on the left. And then this cutting board that we're on here, right, it's almost parallel. And so that doesn't really add energy, right? The hard part with food photos is how do you make them feel energetic, right? It's cookies on a cutting board, right? They're not necessarily like jumping off the page, right? When we're shooting portraits, we can do it with with expression and movement. We can do those things, right? We have a cheerleader jumping through the air, right? Cookies don't tend to jump through the air, right? So what can we do to make them more, vibrant? To make it with, and and it's rule of odds, but not in the way you think. It's adding triangles, right? Triangles of three. So taking what we have as a square here, right? We have a parallelogram right now, right? We have the bottom of the cutting board, an angular line, and then another parallel line at the top. So we have a parallelogram. That's a 4. Not exciting. So what I did, I zoomed in. You can see my crop here, and I twisted it a whole bunch so that we get rid of those parallel lines, and all we have is just the diagonal line. So for cropping, we punched in a whole bunch, and then I boosted the exposure on this a lot, like 1.7, to really bring it up. I mean, my whites are like, ooh, almost, right? They're almost blown out. So I really like crushed up the exposure, brought down the highlights, raised my shadows, right? Because food, you really need those shadows filled in, right? We really want those shadows to fill in nicely there. I boosted my whites as well. I want those photos to feel very bright. Really, food photos, I want them to feel very bright, like annoyingly so. And I like my blacks. My histogram, my data is all in this photo, but I'm just at the edges. A little bit more black, and I'm starting to lose it, and a little bit more white. I'm going to start losing it over on the other end. So again, I punched in. Just the focus was right about here. This was the area of focus, and so let me go back. Right, the area of focus is right here. All right, that's where it's focused. And so I kind of got rid of this because I didn't think it really added anything, and just kind of punched in there. I'm still not great. I don't love this white balance. I didn't have time to really get it to where I wanted. I played with it a whole bunch. I don't love where it's at white balance wise. It's close, but it has a little bit too much green. But when I add a little bit more red, I don't like the way it goes. Maybe a little bit more red. Yeah, a little bit more red. Okay. Um, so, just cropping and rotating to get rid of any parallel lines, and all we're left with is diagonal lines. And since those cookies in the background over here, they weren't really adding anything, I just, I cropped it in closer, so they're just there as just texture. They're not even really there as like an object. So, yeah. All right. So that's where we started with, right? So it's good, but I just feel like it's not quite there. So again, tone curve, one of the things we could have done, right? Just take this tone curve here and just boosted those highlight to midtones, right? Really bring those up, and then just bring down our shadows just a touch without messing with exposure. We can get a lot of the way there already just by adjusting that tone curve. So something to play with, something to try out. Um, anyway, all right. This one, actually, I just shot this person. Photographed. You have to say photographed. You can't say shot. I just photographed this person. This is Olivia. She just was a model for our fitness class. She did a great job. We had her do like 1,000 pull-ups and stuff. It was fun. So, Jess, as y'all may know, Jess Jade, y'all have seen her at both behind the camera and in front of the camera. She has kind of a small studio at her place, right out of her house. She has a little small studio. So she was saying, man, I really want those dramatic photos, but I have a small space. Like, what do I do? So the first thing I would say, if you want dramatic photos, really the first thing is controlling your spill, constricting your light, right? So, right, shoot through umbrellas and softboxes, right? They bounce everywhere, and so in a small space, any reflected light gets added into the exposure again somewhere else, right? Think about shooting a product, right? We're really close. That light's just gonna bounce all around. It's very hard to contain, right? If we're shooting like in a little white, like product box, and so that's kind of what her space is, right? For her, it's a smaller space, so any light she's using is hitting a wall and coming back. And so what I think is interesting, if we first look at this photo, right? Olivia's lit pretty well, but in her shadow is where we have the most saturation, right? There's a big broad light up above. You can see in the catch light of her eyes. See the catch light? And because there's a catch light, we know that light's coming down, and that's the area where that yellow becomes most saturated because the other fill lights aren't kind of washing out, right? There's a light coming from the side over here. There's probably an orange light coming across. I'm guessing it's a yellow background. There's an orange light coming and then a neutral light from the top. That's just my guess without being there. And so what's happening is this big broad light that's up top here is hitting Olivia and then casting a shadow right there. And in that shadow, we have the best saturation. Um, because it doesn't have that light getting washed out there where it does everywhere else, right? Everywhere else, the light's getting washed out by that broad light, right? We have that orange light coming across here. So, they always say size doesn't matter, but it does. Especially studio size. It's just much easier to control your lighting as you have room to control it, right? To put up negative flags, to put in whatever you need to back up the light, whatever. But also to get our subjects off the backgrounds so that your key light isn't also your background light. And that's really what's happening here is that our key light is also affecting our background. So, we would want to move Olivia forward as much as we could. And then that way our key light isn't influencing our background as much. So, because and it would also serve to increase our contrast because then we could light our subject independently of how we light our background, right? But as those get mushed together, we no longer have the control to light them independently. So let me show you what I did to kind of fix this problem. Um, a little different. A little different. So this is taking advantage of the new select subject masking tool in Lightroom, right? So that's the new tool that came out end of October or so. So if you haven't updated Lightroom, I highly recommend it. It's in all the versions. It's in the cloud. It's in the classic. It's on the mobile. It's really cool. Select subject. And so let me show you kind of what we did here. A couple things. One, the first thing I did is just create this custom vignette that had darkened exposure, darkened the highlights. So that is this one right here, this radial, and it kind of creates more of that pinup feel, right? That classic pinup look, which is kind of the pose we're going for here. So that's this gradient, right? We're darkening the area around, and when we darken the area around, what ends up happening is those colors start coming in more because what happened is they had gotten washed out, and so by darkening, we're bringing back in that saturation. Okay, and then the second thing we did, this mask, right? It's barely anything. I just brightened it up 1/10 of a stop, hardly noticeable. So I hit select subject, and it selected Olivia here, and I brightened that up like a fraction. But what I did then was I duplicated this mask, right? We can see the mask there. I duplicated it and then inverted it. And so that gives us the background, right? So duplicate, and now we can see what that's doing. And so here what I did, I increased the contrast because when it's washed out, what's happening is it's lost contrast, right? A washed out light is gonna, lose contrast. So watch as I change the contrast, how it gets kind of flat again and meh, right? But as I increase it, it gets that punchiness back, okay? The other thing I did, I boosted the saturation, okay? Because I want those yellows to be super yellow. I don't want Olivia to be oversaturated. I want the background to be oversaturated, okay? So boosted saturation on just the background, right? If I show the overlay, it's just hitting this background, Okay, really cool feature. Select subject, duplicate, inverse, that gives you the background. Okay, so that's what I do with my masking tools. But then what I also did, I came down here to luminance and I boosted my reds, which is skin tones, and I darkened my yellows, which is the color back here. And so I made that darker. I made her skin lighter. And so what that does is that adds contrast, right? Because now she's brighter and the background's dark. The background is darker. And so that makes her pop off that background even more. Okay? That makes sense? And then I brighten the whole thing up 8/10 of a stop. Okay. But that just makes it feel more poppy, right? So again, there's the original. Right, original. Nothing wrong with it. But then in Lightroom, right, made that pop out. Right. And we put that vignette around her face. Where do I want your eyes to go? Generally face and hands, right? Face and hands. That's where I want your eyes to go. So, yeah. Fun times. Fun times. Aww. Cute photo from Bree. Hey, Bree. I hope you're watching. One of our newest patrons. Hey, Bree. She said she had a fence blow down at their house and this deer came in and started eating all their roses. And so she grabbed her camera, took this photo, and then started shushing it away. So always the photographer, right? Get the photo and then scare the deer away. But I think, right, with animal photos, right, gesture, that's always the thing. I just tried to photograph some deer out in the wild, and I did a terrible job because I never really had a gesture, right? So we had this bright red flower. We have a deer going to munch down on it. And then we kind of have like the swoop of the neck as an S curve. And then everything else is muted, right? So if you don't really, if you squinted your eyes, you would think that this was like a, what's it called? Selected color? That's not right. Anyway, like, remember the Lance Armstrong bracelet ads where everything was black and white, but except for the bracelet was yellow? Whatever that is. When you first see it, it kind of feels like that. Everything's monochromatic except for that flower. And so that's kind of a neat thing, but it's not, right? There's greens, there's yellows, there's browns, there's reds in it. So it's really cool. It's neat that you can actually see the deer's teeth. You don't normally see the deer having teeth. So I wonder how good these flowers tasted to them because he is going after it. So it's a cool moment. The other thing that's cool about this photo, right, is the aspect ratio. So this crop is, it's almost like a vertical 16 by 9, I think. Yeah, so a vertical 16 by 9, which I don't know that I have ever cropped a photo vertically 16 by 9 for me. I don't know. Never came up. Most of my 16 by 9s, I like that cinematic look. So, I think one of the things to tell yourself is always crop to the action of the photo. In this case, right, what was interesting, right, that extended neck. So having that vertical really accentuates that extended neck. And let you focus on that rose. And I bet it follows. I'm curious now on this overlay if it follows some like golden. Yeah, look at that. I thought it did. And I don't even have this perfect, but if we have our Fibonacci spiral, look at how this photo kind of fits flower, mouth, texture of the leaves down to the neck. Can y'all see that it fits the that golden ratio there? Everybody see that? Kind of cool, right? So the first thing we see is that red in the flower, right? That's that little spot. We go out to the chin. We come up to the texture of the leaves, elongated neck, and then out, right? Into the negative space there. Very good, Bree. Very good. Kind of cool, right? Kind of cool. So, very cool. The only thing I'd probably run that through that On1 new denoise. Yeah. Killer Chi, what's up? Where you been? Haven't seen you. So yeah, pretty cool. I really like that one. Is that our last one? What do we have next? Oh, no. We have one from Farmhouse Photography, our friends down in Marion, Texas. We're going to be down there shooting in April. So she said this is a cute little engagement photo, I'm guessing. A light just from above. You can always tell the catch lights, right? If you zoom into the eyes, you can kind of see where those catch lights are. So I love this kind of soft, hazy, out there. And look, her eyes are in focus, but I think this was shot with a 135 f2 if I had to guess, because I know what lenses she uses. But if we see the hands are already out of focus, even though her eyes are sharp. So a couple things to fix up. This little hair going across the eyes, that always kind of bothers me a little bit. And then that little bit of a hair on the chin right there, I'd probably clone those out. This pose is always a little tough. We get a little bit of a double chin from the guy here. One of the ways to fix this is have the guy just stand wider, or whoever's taller. Sometimes it's the bride. Our last bride was taller than the groom, so just have them stand wider. It might feel weird, but you don't see his legs anyway. But it gets them more on the same level where they're not so down here and seeing all that, right? So if he's more on the level, right, it doesn't have that dip. And then the hat. I don't know that I would have kept that hat on. We can't see anything from his face. It looks like he's smiling, but we're kind of missing that. The upshot is we look at her and not him. Generally, that's a good thing. I know I want photos of me and my wife. I want people to look at her, not at me. So that's probably a good thing there. I feel like this photo, though, is a little bit underexposed. I think that this glow out here is controlled. So what I did, I just brightened it up. Added some vibrance, but I did a custom tone curve as well, just to brighten up those kind of highlight areas, right? Not too much, just to give some punch in here. And then I warmed it up just a little bit, right? Kind of give it that late afternoon feel, just that little bit of warm, not a lot, +9 on a JPEG, right? Not a lot. And then just boost the exposure just a little bit. So it's just a little bit to kind of boost up in here. The other thing I did on this tone curve, this top line, I just don't let it get to the top as a way to control my highlights. So I pulled down that top of the tone curve, so I just don't let it output 255, because if I do, I blow up my highlights. So to keep the brightness on their face without crushing my whites, I'm just going to bring it down just that touch, and that keeps it from overexposing my highlights. So just a little trick there. Custom tone curve and just kill that right there. It keeps the brightness in our face, right? Because if I don't, let's say see how that's overexposed, and so I have to bring down my whites to control that overexposed there. Right now, look at her face. Right now, her face loses some of that brightness, and we never get rid of that completely, right? All right, so maybe, right, so even there, right, her face is still flat. So by just dipping that top of that control, I can brighten up my whites to keep that brightness in there. And it makes her face the brightest thing in the subject. So just something to check out there. Just something to do. But yeah, good group of photos. I don't know. We'll probably do February stream virtual, and then maybe let's aim for March doing it in person again. There's just a lot of stuff. A lot of COVID in the air, it seems, lately. So it has hit a lot of families I know, a lot of friends. So we're trying to stay a little safe. And then for this weekend, I have 4 classes at Precision this weekend. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have Mastering the Headshot Saturday. We have Film Noir Saturday. And then Sunday we're doing Product. And then Sunday we're doing Color and Light. Color and Light may be switched. I don't know. Color and Light or Film Noir. Color and Light's really cool. We use 3 speed lights and gels. That's it. But we really create a whole bunch of weird photos out of it. And then Film Noir, we look at some like the Hollywood classics, like Greta Garbo, some of like Marlene Dietrich photos, and then try to recreate some of them. But it's really working with that constricted light and just using like scalpels of light instead of big modifiers. So that's a fun one as well. Yeah, any questions for today? Anything we can answer? Any questions? I appreciate y'all coming out and coming out to our first Josh Says Mean Things of 2022. That's really fun. I missed y'all. Except for those we froze together. We were almost like had to huddle together because we were so cold. I brought 2 left gloves. That was smart. Huh? I got 2 left feet, but I have a left and a right hand, so I got lost somewhere along the way. And then I forgot a sync cable, so Steven had to let me borrow a sync cable. And then Gene didn't have a tripod plate, so then Jim donated a tripod plate for a little bit. And then Mark didn't have a good enough tripod, so I had an extra tripod. So when you shoot together, you know, it helps. Right? Going out in groups is more fun than going by yourself. Um, so yeah. For those of you on the top tier, February we're going to be doing macro, and we're working on a date for that. But we'll do that sometime in February. We're going to play with macro lenses. So I'm glad that there were some macro photos in there. We could talk about it a little bit. And then March we'll probably be doing another model shoot in March, because that'll be fun. Maybe blue bonnets or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe we'll do mermaid blue bonnets or something crazy. So I don't know. Well, I'm open to suggestions. If you have things y'all want to do, let me know and we'll set it up. As always, I'm here for y'all. So I am always open to suggestions. So yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I got some posts in the works. So yeah, like I said, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Y'all can always text me. Y'all should have my cell phone and my email by now. Um, so yeah. Otherwise, y'all have a great rest of y'all's week. And I'm not gonna be able to do a Learn Lightroom live stream. So the next stream we'll do is another Josh Says Mean Things. Um, so yeah, good night to learn. Yeah, good night to learn. Yeah, it's always a good night to learn. It's weird being back like streaming, but things are shutting down again. So I know the school district just north of us, they had to cancel classes for a couple days because they didn't have enough bus drivers or teachers. So that was somewhat problematic. Didn't affect us, but I know that a lot of school districts are closing down and different things. So we're just trying to keep it safe for everybody out there because we love y'all and we want to keep shooting with y'all. So if we get y'all sick, that wouldn't be a good thing. So all right, well that's all I got for tonight. Good night and good luck, and we'll see y'all in a couple weeks. All right, see you guys.